what we face is population collapse. Collapse. Like, people have no idea how fast the population is going to collapse. Like, a low birth rate is a slow death for a civilization. It's not a fast death.
Yeah, we're chilling for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, you're cruising. It's just like the average age just starts drifting up, and then, basically civilization will die with a whimper in adult diapers.
Wokeness, leftism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, there is a prevalent anti-gospel of Jesus Christ out there that Satan really wants you to believe, that the world really wants you to believe, and it is the gospel of death. It always leads to death, whether fast or slow, spiritual and literal death. And Latter-day Saints are partaking in this gospel far too much. And I want to talk to you about that and show you exactly what I mean. Hey, I know it's been a while, kind of getting back into the saddle of things here. As you know, on this channel, we like to discuss the wokeness, the influence of the world coming into the church, and how we can combat that and have real discussions that can reinvigorate your faith. This is not a place where we tear down Latter-day Saints and church leaders and try to propose a new way of being a member. No, this is about trying to make you true to the faith and stronger as individuals, as followers of Christ. So having said all that, let's take a look at what some other people are saying about people having children. I want to show you something that I thought was interesting. This comes from the Timcast. Let me pull up the video right here.
Now, here's what I asked. How many 18-year-olds will there be by year for the next 10 years? And I want to give you the context as it gives it to me, right? Because it doesn't seem that bad. However, by 2030, there will have been a 7.4% decrease from 2026. 2026 is expected to be the peak period, they're saying right now. Though, many are pointing out the demographic collapse is about to hit because of population decline, which rapidly accelerated at the end of the 2000s. Take a look at this. The silent generation as of right now, 2025, is around 20 million. And it's because they're old and dying. Baby boomers are at 69 million. It is down. It used to be a lot more, and they are getting old and they're dying. Gen X is around 65 million, which is kind of shocking considering Gen X is still very alive. Millennials, 72 million. Gen Z, 69. Gen Alpha, which they're projecting to be over, they say around 48 million. Now, I've seen estimates between 40 million and 48 million. That's the high end. So
that's terrible. So if you think about that, let's look at this real fast. What he's saying is, like every other line means that was the parent, these are the children. So about 20 million left of people born between 1928 and 1945. It's very old, between ages 80 and 97. So that's the average age range. Now, those people had children, and there's about 65 million of those people still alive, Generation X. A lot of those people definitely... there were some wars they went through as well, Vietnam and whatnot. But 65 million, okay. But baby boomers, right? The 69 million of them, they had children, brought 72 million Generation Y. So all right, and Generation Y is millennials. So my parents are boomers. Okay, so it's like, okay, all right. So the baby boomers. They boomed, like World War II vets had a bunch of kids, or they just wanted to live life. Baby boomers were decent, maybe not the best, but they're decent at having more than just stabilizing the population. Doesn't look like significantly more, but a little bit more, right? The downward trend was happening there. And then what we see here is, though, millennials have done a terrible job at having children so far. We are the ones producing Generation Alpha for the most part. We are the ones, and there's only projected to be 40 to 48 million of them. And he goes on to say in this video about how it is expected that more and more of these younger generations are going to have less kids, though they anticipate that perhaps I think it was Generation Z will have more because they're turning out to be more religious, more Christian, more devoted to Jesus Christ, which is a really positive thing. But let's go back to Latter-day Saints and the problems that we're starting to see happening amongst Latter-day Saints which should be really bothersome to all of us. All right, so when I talk to people, especially when they're in very condensed areas of Latter-day Saints, I'm actually very shocked to hear how common it is for them to try to date and find that there's just, whether we're talking about men or women, there's just not a lot of interest in getting married. There's a lot of interest in getting one to look good in the gym or pursue their career. I'm not saying that to wait to have kids in general is a bad thing. What I'm saying is I'm noticing it becoming much more common, which is what for Latter-day Saints to think like the world, which is, you know what? Kids aren't that important. Having a family isn't that important. No, it is important. Traveling around and having fun, choosing to go cruising and like, in other words, having and rearing a family is seen as a burden that should be abdicated as long as you can until you're done enjoying the roller coaster of all the dreams you want to fulfill. Then start doing this other stuff because, I mean, maybe it's secondarily important, right? Even though that may not be said, that actions speak louder than words. What people do speaks so loudly I cannot hear what they are saying. But in this case, a lot of people are saying it. I've even read text message threads where people are saying, yeah, I just want to focus on my career right now. I don't really want to date anymore. Because they're afraid of their relationship getting more serious. What's going on there? Let's take a moment here and let's look at some research I did with Perplexity AI, which is a favorite tool of mine for finding, doing in-depth research pretty fast. And I asked the question about, okay, well, are the birth rates among the younger generations of Latter-day Saints going down? Are they having less children? And here's what it found. So it shows that recent data and analyses indicate that younger Latter-day Saint adults are both having fewer children and starting families at a later age compared to previous generations. So think of that. Having kids later in life and having less kids. That is a major indication that the anti-religion, the religion of the devil of the world, is greatly infiltrating and influencing Latter-day Saints. So it talks about here that, so for example, although Latter-day Saints in the U.S. have more children than the national average, their rate has declined significantly. It used to be 3.31 in 1981. It went to 2.42 in 2014. And then if you look at Utah specifically, it's down to 1.85. Now, understand this. In order for you to have a proper TFR, total fertility rate, a proper one that just makes the minimum enough to replace the parents that will die off, you need 2.1. 1.85 means we are having less than the replacement rate. And as a religion, and a value system and culture that supposedly should value families and rearing of children more than anything else, this is astonishing. And you think about it, that's Utah. Utah's a major Latter-day Saint hub. And though not everyone in Utah is LDS, the major religious influence of this particular area will also influence the people who move into it and live there as well. Now we see that the strength of the LDS community is waning significantly, so much so that people are being influenced to live like the rest of the world. I want to read to you a verse here from the scriptures. I think it's really powerful. It says, I'm going to quote this from the Common English Bible, just to make it very easy for anyone to understand this. When I said that wokeism, that the anti-gospel of Jesus Christ ideology that's out there, that Latter-day Saints are partaking of because the world is partaking of it and it looks so enticing, it leads to death, either right away or eventually. These fertility rates are an example of how it leads to death eventually. Selfishness leads to death, spiritually and physically. If you cannot repopulate, your population dies, your civilization dies, your faith dies out. So, in the Common English Bible, in Romans chapter 8, verses 6 and 7, it says, the attitude that comes from selfishness leads to death. But the attitude that comes from the Spirit leads to life and peace. I want to say that again. The attitude that comes from selfishness leads to death, but the attitude that comes from the Spirit leads to life and peace. Wokeness, anti-gospel of Jesus Christ ideology, that religion that's out there that we're all partaking of because it's so prevalent in our culture, it is selfishness. It's a form of selfishness, and it does lead to death. It leads to smaller families dying off wards and branches and civilizations, but also to us dying spiritually, spiritual death, because it's hard to come closer to God when we can't live a life that He's commanded us to live, which He commanded us to live so we can understand how to be like Him. So the attitude that comes from selfishness is hostile to God. It doesn't submit to God's will because it can't. I love that Common English Bible. Straightforward. And it's hard to pinpoint truer words than that. Now, I want to share some words by Neil L. Anderson here, because I think they're pretty poignant about rearing families and having faith, because what we need is a renewal of faith. Let me share this with you.
Mason had another experience just weeks after his marriage that helped him prioritize his family responsibilities. He said, "Marie and I had rationalized that to get me through medical school, it would be necessary for her to remain in the workplace. Although this was not what we wanted to do, children would have to come later. While looking at a church magazine at my parents' home..."
Isn't that interesting? He just said, even though it's not what we wanted to do, children would have to come later. See, that's important to note, that not everyone drinks the Kool-Aid of children, we don't really want children. Sometimes we just also misalign our priorities, and then we convince ourselves that out of necessity, we have to follow this commandment much later. And as he says in this talk, which I won't show, I don't have time, he does say, and the church has always said, it's between you and the Lord. But let's keep watching real fast, and I'll get back to that point in a moment.
I saw an article by Elder Spencer W. Kimball, then of the Quorum of the 12, highlighting responsibilities associated with marriage. According to Elder Kimball, one sacred responsibility was to multiply and replenish the earth. My parents' home was close to the church administration building. I immediately walked to the offices, and 30 minutes after reading his article, I found myself sitting across the desk from Elder Spencer W. Kimball. This wouldn't be so easy today. I explained that I wanted to become a doctor. There was no alternative but to postpone having our family. Elder Kimball listened patiently and then responded in a soft voice, "Brother Mason, would the Lord want you to break one of His important commandments in order for you to become a doctor? With the help of the Lord, you can have your family and still become a doctor. Where is your faith?" Elder Mason continued.
I love that. Would the Lord want you to break His commandments just so you can achieve an outcome, which is not a bad thing to do? Getting into a career. That's really great, really inspired question. And where's your faith? Another very inspired question.
Our first child was born less than a year later. Marie and I worked hard, and the Lord opened the windows of heaven. The Masons were blessed with 2 more children before he graduated from medical school 4 years later.
I can really relate to this, just to share from my own personal life. This man, just weeks after getting married, they talk about having children, and they go through this. Just weeks after I got married, we had a prompting from the Spirit regarding the timing of trying to have children. And we had talked before about having children, and we wanted to wait 2 years. But this prompting came to us to consider about having children and to actually take it to the Lord. There wasn't like we weren't told when yet, but it was we need to actually really consider this and go to the Lord for it. And we did, and the Lord's answer was vastly different than our presupposed plan, than our original hope. We had children way faster than we anticipated. And I could never go back in time and try to change that, because it has been the greatest blessing in my life. It's been amazing. And having children is amazing and worth the sacrifice, no matter how much stress and how hard and how much you have to juggle to get it done. I would never trade, give myself a little more time on my career or my schooling or whatever else, just so I could feel more comfortable and less stressed, or, just so I can, pamper my own selfishness. I would never do that in order to save myself a few gray hairs and wrinkles or whatever else, ever. This has been amazing. And I know it'll be amazing for you whenever it is right, which it is between you and the Lord, you, your spouse, and the Lord. It's really important to know that. But here's the problem that I need to get into now, which is, are we actually including the Lord? So here's the thing. Sometimes we think that we include the Lord and we don't, because we aren't actually willing to submit our wills to His. That's praying without real intent. That's not asking with real faith. That's holding on to what we have planned because we think it sounds so good, and we aren't willing to relinquish it. Therefore, there's no room for the Spirit to work within our hearts. I don't want this to be a sermon. I just want this to be just a point that, as Latter-day Saints, we could do better to try to follow the Lord more carefully and to listen to Him, especially so we can, cut away these flaxen cords that lead us down to hell, that prevent us from enjoying the full richness that the gospel brings. Let's see what Elder Nelson at the time, what he had to say. I think this is very, very potent here. Let's give it a listen.
Paul's warnings describe apostasy and other dangers of our day. Some of those perils are contrary to God's purposes and are championed by persuasive people possessing more ability than morality, more knowledge than wisdom.
Sounds like you just described all the social media influencers out there.
Their rationalization breeds justification. The Bible affirms that the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Indeed, individuals with malignity of purpose often wear the mask of honesty. So we must constantly be on guard. To build a house straight and strong, you do not choose crooked boards. So to build your eternal destiny, you must not limit lessons only to those warped to exclude revelation from God.
That's amazing. You must not limit lessons only to those warped boards, right? Those warped boards when you build your house, to exclude revelation from God. We have to sincerely and honestly seek revelation from God.
The Book of Mormon offers this note of caution and hope. Seek not to counsel the Lord, but to take counsel from His hand. For behold, ye yourselves know that He counseleth in wisdom and in justice and in great mercy over all His works.
That's so beautifully said. This is not meant to be any sort of a video that is trying to critique the church or the brethren or anything else like that. We got to be careful not to do dumb things like that, because we can get ourselves into trouble. There's times we can discuss it, but really the focus of this is to point out that as Latter-day Saints, we need to refocus ourselves upon Jesus Christ and His doctrine. And actually, in support of our leaders, I think it's amazing how inspired they are. I have learned this because my father is currently, he serves in as a seminary teacher. And he said something that they're doing different in seminary, which he finds amazing, is that instead of trying to focus on the or instead of trying to make sure that the kids are learning how to memorize scriptures and the stories, the whole focus of every part of their lessons is to learn the doctrinal points in those sections of Come Follow Me. Why is that? I mean, you think about it, memorizing the scriptures, haven't the prophets said that, having the scripture memorized is like having a friend that you can call upon in any moment of need? Like, there's a lot of things you could say to support this, but how can you get more poignant and more pure with strengthening someone than having them focus upon the doctrine? See, what we're having a crisis in the church where people are focusing too much on these worldly influences and ideas that are not wise, that are wrong, and not honest, and lead to lower levels of happiness and joy, even misery. So they're bringing them back to the doctrine. Why? Well, everything I'm describing that we're struggling with, those are behaviors, right? The way we behave, the way we choose to live, those can't all be shaped by how we believe. And how do you shape how you believe? Study the doctrine. Let me close just with this incredible quote by President Boyd K. Packer, which you've probably heard, but hopefully it hits differently for you today.
True doctrine understood changes behavior. The study of doctrines of the gospel will improve behavior quicker than the study of behavior will improve behavior.
There you have it. The more Latter-day Saints struggle with any of these worldly infiltrations to our faith, the more we need to actually study doctrine purely and truly. That will keep us moving forward in the right direction. That will do much more for us than us just having political discussions. And I really want to thank you so much for listening. If you've gone this far, don't forget to subscribe, and please share this with your friends, because there are other people who need to hear this. And if you can think of just one of them, share it with them. And in the comment section below, I want you to share with me some of your favorite quotes from Latter-day Saint apostles and prophets that have greatly influenced your life and helped you stay on the covenant path. I'd love to see them, and I'll respond as quickly as I can to them. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.